My colleagues are late, so there is possible for that.
Okay. But I have to speak in a minute. So.
Welcome to this session, one of the parallel sessions, and the theme is integrated lifelong guidance support. And I think this is a very current issue because many of the speakers during the panels and in presentations were highlighting the importance of cross-sectoral cooperation and also having the coherence of the theme. And I will be acting as a moderator of this session, and the goal of this session, according to all the hosts, addresses that it's our task to generate a reflection over the challenges and methods to achieve integrated services that provide lifelong guidance and counseling support to individuals. And the role of the individual and the agency of the individual was highlighted also in the panel. And also response strategies can reflect upon links between education and training-based career services with employment services, action, procedures and tools which can facilitate greater integration and provision, existing services which can support greater integration, for example, validation of competencies. So this theme, as I mentioned also in my speech, that there have been a number of meetings around this topic, and this year especially, and we are referring to those outcomes. And the agenda for the 75 minutes is as follows. We have a first input from Dr. Wolfgang Müller, and he will highlight this theme from his perspective. And then I provide a brief, in a more detailed overview of the country responses, highlighting some of the recent progress, some of the identified challenges and future options. And after that we have more than, let's say, half an hour, depending on the schedule, might be more than half an hour. We have table discussions to reflect on those. And for that table reflections, I'm asking you to think that if one person at the table who has a computer would take notes, and we have an online platform or shared document where I'm asking you to write your comments and table summaries already during the discussions, and that would make it faster to sort of summarize the conclusions during the last 10 minutes. So we will be collecting your inputs to feed the tomorrow's discussions, but also the conclusions and the messages from this seminar tomorrow afternoon. So your inputs are very valuable. And I think I hand over to Wolfgang at this point to provide your input. Welcome. And you can introduce yourself as well.
Well, I have this portable microphone. No, it's not working? Oh, I need this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so very good. Yes, well, I would say at least probably half of the room I already know because of our common work in the European Lifelong Guidance Policy Network, where I was a representative from the European Network of Public Employment Services, so to provide the insights that we have. And well, of course, in the beginning it was supposed that Elisabeth Arp, who is now working at the Commission, that she's also here. She's not. So I was in the beginning told to focus a little bit more on the German perspective. So I will be a little bit biased and refer to that, but I try to have a European view on that, a more general view on that. And of course, well, as usual, I should be a little bit more provocative. So so that is what I'm trying to do in the next 13 minutes, I guess. No, well, more or less.
20.
Oh no! It's so it's. So I do not have a PowerPoint or anything presentation. I'm not a big fan of that. Well, when we talk about that issue, and now I'm focusing, of course, especially on guidance services. We had that issue in the public employment services. We were thinking about, okay, what is our target group? So that is where we started to say and usually everyone would say it's quite easy, unemployed people. Well, we have heard a lot about the future and work and so on, and we have to start thinking how to provide information and how to enable people to work with that by themselves. So when you start thinking in that way, automatically your group becomes larger, because you have to think about how do I provide people who are, well, I would say in the beginning of thinking about where to go professionally. So we should start there, and then you are back, you're already in school, in the school system. Whenever there's a shift from lower to upper secondary or whatever school system you have, but there's a point where kids start thinking about, and if it's not the kid himself, probably the parents are doing that. So suddenly when we think about, and that is what we are doing in labor market, where we consider ourselves the experts in, hopefully, we are the experts, well, and then you are already a step further and say, okay, already school. I don't want to refer to the discussions when it comes to ideology, but we all know that, that it is not in all educational system understandings that public employment services should be already providing labor market information in career guidance in schools. That is not common, at least not common reality that we have. But that's only one side. So we have the school side, and then we have the next side where you say, well, not only the unemployed, because the unemployed, that is the how we say, that's the personalized failure in the mismatch failure in the labor market. So it's it might be too late. People could still be in employment and they have maybe a stable contract, but based on their profiles, they are a high-risk group. We have heard about, and I will not repeat that, how work can be changed, how digitization will probably kill a lot of jobs, or at least what they do is enhance the skill profile of the jobs being done. So the skills necessary for that. So if that is the case, and we know that there's a high risk profile, so maybe in a more preventative thinking, we should extend our service to the employees as well. So at least the employee, probably not everyone, but at least employees that have a certain risk profile. And then automatically when you think about the employees, you are not far to the employers. Are they aware of how things will change? Are they aware of that their current staff is maybe not suited for the upcoming challenges? So that is the thinking that takes place, and that is not politically not very easy when you start thinking about extending your customers base, and what about the resources that is necessary for that. So that is one issue. The second issue, and when we talk about integrated service delivery, is then, okay, we have heard about the co-coordination. And yes, it refers to a problem that very often in silo thinking you cannot achieve a comprehensive service offer that is needed to solve the problem. So then you have to think about, okay, how do we manage that in a way? I personally, and now the provocative part, I personally, sometimes it's difficult with co-coordination. I think we all, I mean, how many years are we talking about that issue? When I started in 2008 with ELGPN, we were already talking, and now we are 2017. So I'm not so sure if that is in a way working. So if not, what is the alternative to that? And then in the end, my personal opinion is that we have to think about what is the final target of what we want to achieve. So when we talk about the future of work, So what is what we want to achieve in that? And whoever is best suited should not be, the dominating, but at least we have defined that in our network as a conductor. Should be at least a conductor, like in an orchestra. So you have so many different instruments, but in the end there should be something nice to listen to. And that's pretty much the same. So although the conductor is not playing itself an instrument, and everyone is an expert and everyone is extremely good, and maybe they're not dominant, but only in a concerted way there you get a result out of that. So that was the idea. But that is not very easy to achieve, because it's not easy to give up competences to a conductor. But that's in a way what I think is necessary. The other thing is, to remain a little bit provocative, we have heard about future and work and everything is changing, and we're not talking about what is happening today, but is what is happening, even further away. But the point is, when we as a public employment service ask an employer and say, look, okay, what do you need in 6 months? Well, the answer is very often, ask me in 3 months, then I know what is in my order book. So, even 6 months, which is not a very long time, especially when you think about and upskilling strategies, you cannot say, the employer saying, oh, I need it now. And I say, yeah, look, where's my unemployed that is ready? No, we don't have it, sorry. So we have to and upskill it. Yeah, but I need it now. Well, sorry, it takes, at least 3 or 6 months just to, to identify the right person and train him. So it is not easy like that, but that's the reality. So when we think about further, like 10 years or so, I don't know if that is realistic. I know that we are, in career guidance, we are thinking about career pathways. And that is an understanding of, not linear in a way of that, it's one career step and higher. It does not mean they are not turning left and right. But it is still in a way of thinking that that there is a corridor, and in that corridor there are certain elements, and that is what we try to provide, that information that the person is able to do so. But to be honest, I'm not so sure if that is a realistic view anymore, because we are happy if we can manage the next step. To think about the step beyond that, I would say for us it is impossible. And also it is impossible because at least we haven't found training elements, for example, how to train people in career management skills. Everybody knows it's absolutely necessary, but how do we as counselors train? We are counselors, we are not trainers in principle. So we have to somehow organize that, but that's not, I would say, that's very difficult, at least in our environment that we see. And when it comes to career guidance in school, we face that problem. It's about the immediate next step. And then, of course, you can say, yeah, of course, when you do that vocational training, potentially those are the areas you can work in, the industry, the branches, or when you look further in your, what is the qualification behind the initial vet? Well, then, of course, we can give that information as well. But when you have that changing environment of work, not only when it comes to the profession itself, but also that, how many people of you, are still working in the area where they have started? Probably here it's more consistent than outside when we look at the people we are dealing with. There you have got, various changes, and to create there a pathway in a guidance service, I would say it's difficult. But, so in the end, I think, what time, do we have the birds here? No, we don't have the birds here. But of course, very good. while what we have started is nevertheless a pilot project. It's called Lifelong Guidance, and it is about very much about accessibility, and we have heard that it's a big point, and we have decided that for us that at least in Germany, it's not a common European. It's in the German Public Employment Service, because very often when you look at public employment services, you have a divide between people registered, and very often because they are entitled. Because they have worked long enough, they're paid into the insurance system, and therefore they're entitled to unemployment benefits. But what about when you are not entitled? So, for example, people studying at university, usually they have never paid into the system, so whenever they are unemployed, they are not entitled. Therefore, they are not registered, therefore they cannot get any services. So the question of being entitled and what is the service offers for those not entitled. So that's the idea, to enhance our client base, to say it doesn't matter if you are, have paid into the system, entitled to unemployment benefits or not, you can receive the service anyway. So that is something. So we have tried to, to offer that service at every step necessary. So yes, in school that was already our legal task. So provide career guidance services in the general school system. Then the next step is when people are leaving school and go to the vocational training. So of course when people are unemployed, but also when there is I would say a distortion in the training happening. So people of danger dropping out of the school. People that are dropping out of VET because they finally found out it's not my cup of tea, or people dropping out of studies. In Germany you have got 25% in each of those groups, not in school leaving, that is 10, but we have 25% dropping out of vocational training and 25% dropping out of their studies. Not completely, but because they have found out that's not my thing, I made a mistake. So you can question now the quality of the career guidance service, but and then people in employment. So that is still a group that we consider. The closing remark is the guiding principle we are using here is that it's a self-help. So we are helping to enable people to self-help by structured information and becoming aware of what are the skills and competences and the motivation they have. So that's our approach, and you could say it's maybe a little bit not very much. I say I mean, you could do more, but from a practical point of view, at least public employment service, we have decided to leave it there. You could do it differently, but we say, okay, look, the guiding principle is that helping for self-help. It's a kind of societal risk management. So I mean, to addressing all those groups, trying to address them with a service. So that's the idea. So that is what I wanted. So I explained a little bit how we are thinking about the integrated service delivery. As I said, it's not about doing it ourselves alone, but the idea of what is the aim in the end, and because of that aim we are in the conducting role and not an institution under the educational system in Germany. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And think you were able to, in a concrete manner, to highlight many of the issues that were raised in your country responses. And what I do next, I go briefly the responses, and then we have time in the table, leave time to table discussions. And if I highlight first that a number of countries indicated, you mentioned that we have been working 10 years on the cooperation. There are examples of countries where this cooperation takes place, and they have sustainable national working groups or lifelong guidance forums where the with key stakeholders are informing each other about the goals. But then we have, and they have been using, identified that they have been using the guidelines and the materials in developing the working methodology. Then we have a few countries which have evidence that in addition to national working groups, there are regional working groups as well, which have representatives from sectoral councils or chambers of commerce, service providers, local administration, and they are working together, informing each other and providing, supporting the local actual service delivery. Then the top-down, bottom-up strategies means also that there are representatives of users who are having their voice in designing the service, the models for service delivery. And you mentioned the best network, so the same issue and the conductor role was discussed in Helsinki 28th and 29th of June, so a few months ago, and some of the themes were emerging, and this conductor role was discussed in more details, and they have some elements that were included within the LGBN guidelines, which are focusing on the employment sector. So some of them were common concerns or common progress. But the remaining challenges, as you said, the countries respond that there's a remaining need for systematic cooperation between different sectors. And this has also, now when we come to the ICT, we have examples of countries that different sectors have developed their own ICT tools to inform their internal users or internal clients, but also collecting information for themselves. But if we are aware that the individuals, they are using services from more than one sector, so the full potential of ICT has not been used if the services have been developed for each sector separately. And this has implications that it's not used in informing the guidance policies or the service delivery. But on the other hand, we heard this morning that the Commission has a number of documents which highlight the importance of career guidance or lifelong guidance, but this coherence or coordination, there has been a vacuum during the last few years within the Commission level, and this was the message from the Member States. And then the options, what were raised in your response is that there's a concrete proposal that cross-sectoral cooperation should start at EU level among the different units within the Commission, and this is a direct quote from some countries. One option would be a working group with smaller representation, or these continuation of these annual biennial meetings or annual or biennial meetings with policymakers. And also attention should be paid how the ICT and technology could be sort of used in bringing the sectors together, and the promotion of the online workspaces for mutual learning and the careers need is an example where this data could be collected. So these were the common proposals, and now we are inviting you to discuss within tables during the next, we have 35 minutes actually. Think of these issues, what Wolfgang was highlighting. We have these remaining challenges. We have examples of well-functioning cooperation, also integrated service delivery, how to integrate different sectors or use ICT as well. So which actions can be adopted to help bring upon innovation in policy and practice levels, bearing in mind this institutional resistance, what you mentioned. So we need We have also researched that it's important that we are able to identify the area of cooperation both geographically and also from substance perspective, what should be the jointly agreed outcome, and after that discuss which organization or which service provider can best sort of provide the services that meets the commonly agreed goal. So it can be within these different sectors. And then another question is how can stakeholder cooperation and cross-national exchange better be shaped to contribute this process? So we have the forums, but they are not necessarily functioning. We have good examples from both functioning and let's say the forums which are starting. Relevant within the EU level to promote this further. And I want you to go beyond not just mentioning a forum would be enough sufficient, but what would be the actions, concrete forms of this cooperation. And this is, we have this URL on the bottom, tinyurl.com, and there's YCRLNHSF. This was the URL that was provided by a host. There's an online shared document, so if one of the tables would activate that URL and start making notes, we could then wrap up it faster at the end of the meeting. So when we are wrapping the material, so I'm not asking that each table can provide comments. If you write it along, we can show it on the screen, and then we can get if there are patterns emerging, and then we can agree some of the recommendations for tomorrow. Julio.
We need to decide the number of tables.
Yes, so the table goes here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and anyone's
And the extra chairs.
Yeah.
We can make a table without table here.
That's one option.
The
Yes.
circle of chairs.
Yes. So that would be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah.
Looks like if you have like the elections. proposed it. Of course, it's depending on national context, but this would be an advantage.
And coaching is an American tradition, so
We don't do that anymore.
It should be well prepared for doing this project.
but it's also good reflection for the coaching.
But on the other side, EURES, for example, got
Denmark right now.
Because they consider the agencies well known in the I see.
it's not well known.
No, I don't know.
So you don't have like a toolkit.
Not on the national.
So when you develop the first assessment articles, the first few days,
We actually, before do that, when we finish it,
It makes sense because you make pressure to it. It's a good place to get the point, so we need to be patient. When you change
we were told
change speed.
Yes, from first to third at least. From first to
Like
balloon
when you
to
leverage,
second.
mind leverage. It's like a I just say that also about that question, how can these institutions help? They can help fund research so that we get better data, evidence-based knowledge. What you say, pressure is online, what do you know?
I think here guidance is also more like
But can European institutions help the local politicians?
Local to national, let's say. The class is to the national, tell them how they can arrange the place for how to make it.
when I start imagine I try to describe this
Europe in your country, it's not anymore like that, everyone available for the
nice culture, and really there is actually crazy.
And then you get to
And even now,
this is something we really find
if I get some better, there's everything they don't want to waste
No, of course, that's not enough, but it's also one.
2 minutes.
And what I like to have is that for 1 month, 2 weeks, you can walk along around with people paying so you I would like to go in one region. And one month.
Trying to figure out what happened in Lisbon. Yeah. So, look, in this map,
Why do we for students and also on the level of personality, you can get ideas from other countries that you don't think about because you're in your own environment. To get out from that, to look how other people very inspiring.
Okay. I'm not using the microphone for this hall. This microphone is only for the external viewers, so I will be shouting. But what we did, we were looking at some of the materials and the notes, and I picked up 3 themes that were emerging. There was one was the bench learning. Let's go back. Many of you were proposing a forum, a working group, and we have had forums in a number of countries. But then the challenge of the forums was that they don't have a mandate, or according to your notes, they don't have a mandate, not necessarily to have impact. So that when you were proposing the forums, there's a need to discuss also what type of mandate it has, and what is the voice of the forum, to what extent it can be heard. But then one of the new elements which have not been used so much within guidance was the benchmarking or bench learning, but Wolfgang mentioned that that has been a method in PES network, and you saw some potential on that.
No, I mean the idea, and that was, I mean, we picked up what you have written there to say, okay, we need benchmarking, we need indicators, we need standards in that, and that is exactly what we were when we developed that idea, to say, although it doesn't matter what your institutional setup, your history, your cultural background, whatsoever, your governance, but to have to compare performance. And we agreed among 28 member states. And so that was quite an achievement, that everyone agrees to compare your own performance against 27 others. Although everyone knows that everyone is different, no size fits all. I mean, we all know that, but still, you know, we have come up with that idea. And so we picked that up as an idea. And as it is already implemented and running for over 2 years now, so it's working. So it's, so I think we thought it can work also in that area, picking up on your comments.
The second item that came out was it was in relation to the proposal that was presented in the panel about the resolution. There was also a notion from Norway mentioned that clarification of guidance in skills agenda would be one example, one way to sort of concretize, make it more concrete in addition to a general resolution, or the resolution would be like repositioning guidance across sectors. And then the third one was, it was here in the last group 7, we picked up this idea that thinking this as a process, so trying to identify the elements which are needed for cooperation, and then make it transparent. There was common tool for information sharing and using the ICT of making this process visible. So these were the 3 elements we picked from the notes. But is there something you want to highlight in your group in addition to these 3, which sort of emerged from the materials? We have the microphone. If some with your tables want to highlight something that we were not able to read while you were writing. Or one comment from each table, would that make sense? Or do you think those might be messages from this group? Susan?
Do I need a micro?
That's for the
Okay.
video cast.
Yeah. Okay. At our table, the idea arose that it could be good, and I think it came up this morning already, to have a cooperation starting at the European level between the 2 DGs, and then to include in the mutual exchange all representatives from all national guidance fora, to have an exchange on different topics. This could include then bench learning or other things.
Okay, should I stand up or?
Yep.
Okay. So from our group, we put emphasis on in all future forums that we organize on international, national level, really to engage the business representatives. And we named some also here, human HR professional associations, everyone that is actually working in the world of work, which even in this conference it's not very well presented. To us, this is the first step, just to involve them and to better interact with them. The second point is, because you also mentioned we are doing these lifelong guidance forums, and we were discussing maybe we can contribute with a methodology for better organizing these forums. Because how to ensure collaboration and interaction and this co-creation you were saying in the morning, if they're structured in a more traditional way. So maybe it can be a good way to start. And yeah, we discussed about how to break institutional resistance. Okay, this is, yeah, we were desperate a little bit, but let's say we dream about having a neutral central body that everyone agrees to to host this process. And to be honest, at the end, our table, we reached this state of mind saying, okay, why do we always try to regulate everything when everything is changing all the time, until we build a constructive way of coordinating the system, it changes, and then we need to build another one. So maybe just as a provocation for the groups here. Thanks.
We were discussing here, building on what Lakshar has just said, about how to overcome this lack of political will.
Yeah, building on what has already been said, we were discussing in this table how to overcome the lack of political will in our countries. And one thing was to convince policymakers that prevention is cheaper than intervention. And that the only way we can do it is through evidence-based guidance.
Maybe one sentence why we haven't picked up on this forum and discussion, because we were saying, okay, I mean, how long is that on the table? And So, I mean, there are only two explanations. Either it hasn't been done, so whatever was said and in council recommendations years ago, 9 years ago, or even longer, it is not being done, or it has been done, but somehow the setup is not working. So we haven't picked that issue up again because it's, it's so old, but somehow it's not working. Otherwise, we were not discussing the same issue again and again and again. So it's not working. So we have to change that. Another forum, so that's just to explain why we haven't picked up, because that was mentioned so often, but we haven't picked it up as a solution.
But in a way, there were statements that we need to sort of look at this cooperation or the structure or the working mechanism in the forum in a different way, like looking at as a process. So that's why I picked that one. So I wouldn't totally exclude the importance of the forums as such. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Any other? Do you think these might be the messages we could pick up tomorrow based on this? And that document is now, you can go and browse it, so the notes will be there. So this is one way how we wanted to make this documentation transparent, that you can see all the notes from all of the tables. So it's now 2:45, so we are exactly on time, so it's time. 3:15. Did I say quarter? 3:15. Yes. Thank you very much.